Learning checkpoint 2.4. Number 1 asks you to factor the trinomial. And if you look at your answer choices, you can kind of see the trend of what this problem is asking you for. You are pulling anything that your three terms have in common out to the front of the parentheses and then writing your leftovers inside the parentheses. So what we're going to do first is look at the coefficients or the numbers that we see in each term. We have 8, positive 4, and negative 12. And if you look, you should be able to figure out what number all three of those share as a factor. That's what you're going to pull to the front of the parentheses and then divide that value out to get your leftovers for the inside of the parentheses. And if you're unsure, you can always go back through and distribute back to check, and you should get what you started with. Now we also should look at our variables real quick just to make sure that we can't also factor out any variables. So in my first term, I have x to the power of 5. My second term has x to the power of 2, but my third term does not have any x's, so I can't divide an x out of all three pieces because my last term is a constant. It does not even have a variable to look at. Number 2 is asking you to factor the problem, and so you can do this in a couple of different ways. You can do the method that we learned in class, which was to look at your middle term and know that you want to add to make negative 6, and then look at your last term and know that you want to multiply to make positive 9. So I'm going to do it that way first. I'm going to factor 9 and look at all the different ways that I can multiply to make 9. I can do 1 times 9. I can do negative 1 times negative 9. I can do 3 times 3, or I can do negative 3 times negative 3. Now we're going to be looking for the set of factors that add to give negative 6, and there's only one choice that does that. Negative 3 and negative 3. They will add together to give me the negative 6. So I know that these two values are going to be the ones that I use in my parentheses. Now it's two sets of parentheses for our answer, but look at your choices. They all have an exponent of 2, which means that you would literally just copy these parentheses multiplied out times themselves. For each of these, that would be your expanded answer choice. Number 3 asks you to factor completely. Now on this one, we did not learn a shortcut on how to factor this type of problem. So you're going to need to be a smart test taker on this problem and actually check the answer choices themselves. So if I go through here, I'm going to expand my choices to kind of see what's going on. So 2p minus 9 squared means 2p minus 9 times itself. And then you can use the FOIL method to go back through and say 2p times 2p, 2p times negative 9, negative 9 times 2p, and negative 9 times negative 9 to see if this is giving you the expression that you started with. And you would do the same thing for each answer choice to go through and check. This is 2p plus 9 times 2p plus 9, and then just go through, multiply through using that FOIL method that we talked about before, and just see which one gives you the expression that you started with. Number 4 says, factor this trinomial and select both of the correct factors below. So we are going to be looking for factors of negative 24 that add to give us negative 2. So I'm just going to go through here and list all of the possible ways that I can multiply to make negative 24. I can do 1 times negative 24, negative 1 times positive 24. This is going to take a minute, so just bear with me while I make the list. All right, those are all the possible ways that I can multiply to make negative 24. And you're going to look for the row that adds to give negative 2. So just for example, I'm going to show you what I mean by that. This first row, 1 and negative 24, would add to give me negative 23. That's not what I'm looking for. So I know that, just for example, this first row isn't going to work. The second row, negative 1 plus positive 24, that gives me positive 23. So that's not what I'm looking for. And you would just use that same process to go down the list and find the two numbers that work for this problem. Once you find those two numbers, those are going to be the numbers that fit inside the parentheses in your two correct answer choices. You will be selecting two of the answer choices on this problem. The last question says factor completely. And again, same idea. We are going to be looking for factors of positive 15 that add to give us negative 8. So I'm going to set up the factor tree for you. 15 is positive, so I can do a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative. And there aren't very many ways to do this one. So there are your 4 possible sets of values, and you're going to find the set that would add to give negative 8. And when you write your answer, you're going to make sure you format it like the instructions ask you to, or else the OHS will mark it incorrect. So a sample answer might look like this. You don't use any spaces. You just type it to match this with whatever numbers you need inside the parentheses.